This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Shelby Varner with the K-State Radio Network. K-State grain economist Dan O'Brien starts today's show with the grain market update. He explains how the markets are holding and the current expectations with planting and weather. Keeping the show rolling is K-State's College of Agriculture 2024 Alumni Fellow Shelly Kessen. Shelly discusses her career and why communication is important for producers and consumers. Chip Redmond, K-State meteorologist, ends today's show with this week's weather update. He talks about how Kansas experienced rain and drought expansion this week. That and more is coming up ahead on Agriculture Today. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we start our Friday show with a grain market outlook. And as always, we're joined by K-State grain economist Dan O'Brien. Dan, thanks for joining us once again.
Thank you, Shelby.
Dan, continuing to kick off our conversation with what is futures looking like?
Well, they're pretty bearish according to the perspectives of most ag producers. I saw May corn closed at 426 and the quarter yesterday, that'd be Thursday the 18th. New crop bids for Dees corn had been trading around 470, 475. Now they're at about 460. For soybeans, yesterday's close for the lead contract in May was about $11.34, down about 50 cents from where they were but a week or two ago. And November new crop beans at basically $11.49, $11.50 thereabouts for the close. And wheat for the May contract, $5.77 and a quarter. May contract, $5.75 and a quarter. There's been information coming out here of late talking about break-even prices for wheat as such, and they quoted information from K-State. We gave them the information. They quoted the full economic cost numbers, which were closer to 6.5. The actual cash cost coverage numbers, again, before you pay full cost for land, full cost for machinery replacement, what you'd have for full economic cost long term, $1.50 lower. So we're covering cash costs even at these levels, but in the long run, are you able to replace machinery? Are you able to buy land? Would be the issues of full economic cost. So challenge as it is, I would say that corn for the May contract has been trading in about a 425, 426 to about 450 range over the last 2 or 3 weeks, had gotten down to about 410 in February. So we're not at the very most recent low for that contract, but we're into planting season. And as we'll talk about here in a minute, dry conditions, nothing hindering the planters to roll in most of these areas, even forecast over the next week and a half. So very likely we'll get the crop in. But then the issue of concern about lack of subsoil moisture in a good chunk of the Corn Belt, the need for rain to come, et cetera, will all come into play. But again, myopically speaking, as we stand here today, we're starting to get the crop planted in these areas, and not a lot of worry at present. I would say for the soybean charts, whereas for corn, we had a time back in February, basically, where we traded down to about 410 and the market at about 426, 427 as on yesterday's close. Here for soybeans, in essence, it closed down to 1134 and a quarter yesterday on the May contract, and that matches almost to the tick, to the quarter of a cent where we had been during that same period of market lows in February. So we're at arguably just a little bit more of a crucial time in the market for soybeans than we have been for corn. But then again, you've got the South American harvest coming on. Still arguments, differences of opinion, size of that crop. I would note in the April 11th WASDE report, the USDA projected the Brazilian soybean crop at 124 million metric tons for soybeans. Projected that crop for this year at 155. You still have the CONAB in country projecting about 5 or so million metric tons lower, and projecting also lower for corn. So the USDA in their most recent report basically is pretty confident in their current numbers, unwilling to move any lower, any closer to ConAb until that in-country source, until they have more, I guess, evidence. So we'll see. But right now, the market pretty determinedly trading the higher USDA numbers, and we'll see if it proves that the in-country numbers are correct and market has moved lower for those supplies, then that would be a support for the corn and soybean markets, probably both in coming months, but it's not here yet. I would say also for wheat, we've looked at I've talked about wheat futures trading here yesterday on Thursday, the 18th of April, closed at 577 and a quarter, almost exactly in the middle of the price range we've had from about 550, 552 on the low side to about just a little over 6 on the high side that we've been in basically since January. So we're in a tortuous manner. We're going sideways, up and down, but still staying within that range. Harvest is coming up. We'll watch now all that much more with wheat, whereas we're wondering about planting conditions for corn and for soybeans and sorghum coming up. We'll be looking at crop conditions, the threat of freezes still out coming on, dryness emerging in the Western Corn Belt, and we'll see where wheat goes from there. I would say that in terms of factors impacting the corn market, we've had pretty strong exports, really strong exports actually, for the week ending April the 11th, 61 million metric tons basically of U.S. corn being actually shipped, and we need about 48 to meet the USDA's pace. So, we've got a South American crop coming on, but concerns about it are coming into play. Lowering numbers in country out of Argentina also with too much moisture coming in, and worries about La Nina coming on. So you got that coming in, and grain sorghum shipments. It's on this up and down roller coaster. Moved a little bit lower this week to 3 million metric tons. Need a pace of about 4 to meet the USDA's projections, but really we're I guess as total shipments go relative to the marketing year, we're running a little bit ahead. So still sorghum looking pretty good. Hard red winter wheat, what we grow here, and we've been bemoaning exports for so long, Shelby, that when we have a good week, it's pretty easy to overlook it. But during the week ending April the 11th, we had about 4.8 million bushels of hard red winter wheat shipped. We need a pace of just under 4 to meet the USDA's projections. So here, after beating that market down lower and with poorer exports for months and months and months, it seems, now if we get prices at these low levels, I guess drop to the place where we're more affordable in the world market. And even hard red spring wheat had a pretty good week last week. Basically 5.5 million bushels, need about 4.4 to meet the USDA's projections. So surprising. I guess when you hang out at low levels like this, eventually the market has to come and find value for the price, and they're starting to find it now, even at these low price levels for wheat. So that's a positive thing.
And Dan, you mentioned that WASDE report, which we talked about with you and Guy last week. And really, what impacts have you seen on the market for this week as it's digested? Still
not any hint of positivity. Really, that market. I mean, that market report from the USDA, in hindsight, hasn't changed a lot. I don't think. I would say that there are some quote green shoots. The soybean meal export market holding pretty strong, and that WASDE report basically showed limited to no change. Well, pardon me, we did see an increase in projected exports for soybean oil, but for soybean meal, pardon me, we ended up, and I believe that number, that was unchanged. So we didn't see a drop off in soybean meal exports, and we had a pace of about. We actually shipped about 350,000 metric tons. Need a pace of about 281,000 metric tons on the soybean side. So again, soybean meal side. So again, coming back to the same issue, that whereas prices in that complex generally just so again, 40 USDA projecting for this marketing year a price of about $380 per unit per 1,000 short tons, and that being about $50 to $70 per short ton less than we had last couple of years. And now we've got pace and movement.
And Dan, as we look forward with our producers, what should we keep in mind?
I would say we're underway with field work. There's nothing in our way. We're not overwhelmed with moisture. We're getting the crop in. We have these impending issues tied in with La Nina concerns and dry subsoils that we'll eventually have to deal with, but we're not dealing with them yet. The market has every right to trust that things will be normal. We'll get normal rains, won't have any problems, but it'll have to come. So we'll see where that's at. We still have this impending question about South America we keep talking about because we haven't seen that reconciliation yet. So we'll see where that comes. So here, as we said in mid-April, I think the time of real decision is basically from about May 15th until the end of June. Do we get a good start? Do we have moisture? And from there, if we do that, then you're at risk to what could happen in July, August, even early September in terms of the reproductive phases for corn and soybeans, sorghum, elsewhere in the country. But all those times are ahead of us. Right now, we're just getting the crop in. And if there's anybody that's probably behind the eight ball on this, it would be farmers that haven't sold their crops yet, have cash flow needs, and are wondering where and when higher sales prices might come. Increasingly, they're in a speculative cash storage approach right now in the markets, and there'll be a lot riding on what happens in the next basically 90 to 120 days in terms of old crop sales and new crop opportunities.
Dan, I appreciate you taking the time to join us once again and give us our grain market update.
Thank you, Shelby. I appreciate it.
That was K-State grain economist Dan O'Brien. We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but stick around because we have more for you ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we continue our Friday show with K-State's College of Agriculture 2024 Alumni Fellow Shelly Kessen. Shelly, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Shelby. I'm happy to be here.
Shelly, congratulations on receiving this award, and thank you for taking the time to speak with us today, as you are the Senior Vice President and Partner at Fleishman Hillard, and you are a grad from K-State's Agricultural Journalism program in 1996. But before we talk about all of the accomplishments you've done, backtracking to, you grew up a farm kid.
I sure did. I grew up on my family's fourth-generation dairy farm in Missouri, Peculiar, Missouri, and I was very active in the farm the whole time growing up. With the dairy, we had hogs and then some crop operations as well. So was involved throughout that my whole growing up experience, and was certainly a proud 4-H'er as well, and included that in my upbringing as well.
And how did that lead you to agricultural journalism at K-State?
Well, it set me up in more ways and better ways than what I could have known even at the time. I knew that I wanted to get into ag communications. And so when I came to K-State, I had looked at some other universities, but when I came to K-State, I stepped on campus and I was home. And I'm so glad that it turned out that way, because I've had a wonderful experience at K-State going through the ag communications program. Certainly the coursework was spot on. It really set me up for what I needed in the career. But then all of the added extras really came into play. I had opportunities to do internships, to work at the various departments on campus, to serve in leadership roles with the National Ag Communicators of Tomorrow organization, and then also as editor of the ag student magazine, The Agriculturalist. So all of those opportunities really came together to create a well-rounded experience that set me up well for my career.
And how did you start off your career after K-State?
So my senior year, the Fleishman Hillard office in Kansas City called to the journalism school and said, hey, we need a farm kid who can write. And so they said, well, we have the gal for you. And so that's how I first became introduced to Fleishman Hillard. I had not really considered the PR path, and I did not take a PR class while I was here at K-State, and I haven't since then, but really leaning into the fundamentals and my understanding understanding and passion for agriculture, as well as writing and that core strength and just the principles of communications set me up well for a career in PR. So I started a week after graduating from K-State in their food, beverage, and agribusiness sector. And so I was able to really translate all that I knew and had experienced from farm life into that career right from the beginning. And I've worked with clients throughout the farm to fork spectrum, including ag input companies, commodity boards, all the way through to the branded products and consumer packaged goods.
And as you've worked at Fleshman Hillard, it's taken you out of the Midwest.
It has. I've spent about 10 years in our Kansas City office. I actually worked remotely during that time in large part. And I was living in Larned when my former supervisor in Kansas City, he had moved out to the Sacramento office to be the general manager out there. And so he called and said, "Shelly, what do you think of California?" And I thought, I don't think of California. That really was not on my radar screen. But he has been such an amazing coach and mentor to me over the years, and it was a good opportunity, and so we took it. And at that point, I was living in Larned. I had a 1-year-old son, and so we packed up, my husband and I and our son, and went to California to give it a try. And here I am 18 years later, very much enjoying the California ag scene and really looking at that as such a great opportunity to really experience a well-rounded perspective of agriculture.
And as you've kind of been in that PR agriculture field, how have you seen it develop and change over the years?
Well, I think a lot of it has been technology focused. When I first started, I remember when I was interviewing, I was telling them that I had just gotten my first email address because I wanted to show how cutting edge I was. And everyone was talking, "Oh, yes, we're starting to use email as well. And our clients are using it. And we're all starting to get the hang of it." So that's where I started. And then, I did a lot of blast faxing as we were sending out our press releases and things like that. And so if you think about that, is the foundational piece and just how much that's changed since then and everything that has come along with the, email certainly being second nature, but everything that has emerged from a social media standpoint and an e-commerce standpoint and certainly, how we use technology every day. That has been a dramatic change since the time that I first started my career.
And how have you seen that play into a role of farmers and consumers and everyone being able to communicate with each other?
It's never just a one and done anymore. It's not like we can put an ad in a publication and call it good. We know that we need to reach our producer audience as well as our consumer audience where they are. And very often that is online. It's digital platforms. It's social media platforms. It's where they are consuming their news and information. Now, it's not at all to say that we have abandoned some of the tried and trues and the traditional platforms. It's just we've expanded it because we know that that's where our audiences are seeking their news and information and entertainment as well.
And for those people who are seeking information before the interview, you mentioned who the real people they want to talk to are.
Right. Absolutely. So all of our clients, certainly have their target audience that matters the most to them. And in some instances, that's the end user consumer. In others, it's the influencers along the way that are making those product recommendations. So what we always do is we look at that audience and say, how can we best reach them? What does that look like? And then we create this surround sound approach to really make sure that we are showing up and really showing up relevant to what they are seeking and what they're looking to consume.
And as you've had the opportunity to take people to meet farmers, who are you seeing that they want to communicate with?
Oh, it's so fun, Shelby. When we go on media visits, a lot of times we'll go into the publishing houses and meet with the editors, or we'll bring social media influencers, those that are very much involved in influencing online, out to meet the farmers and to the orchards and things like that. And regardless of whether we are in the middle of New York City or in an orchard visiting with these consumers and with the influencers, they want to talk to the farmers. That's who they have the questions for. That's who they want to know more about. And because a lot of them are not directly involved in agriculture themselves, and so it's such an opportunity to meet those that are and to really talk with them about what that looks like and what that means and how they go about their work. So anytime we have a farmer in the room, they're the local celebrity.
Is that really then an encouragement to farmers to, if someone wants to talk to you, take the time to talk to them?
Well, I think so. I think so because I think there's a real curiosity there. And I think that because so many people are not directly involved with production agriculture today, they want to know and understand it more. And there's just, I think, a sincere interest in learning more about how their food is grown. So I think if you do have that opportunity, a lot of times you're really serving a need and filling a need with creating that education among the consumer.
And Shelly, you have a personal mantra, which I think has probably played a pretty big role in what you do now.
It really has. It is, if you can produce it, we can promote it. And that mantra is really steeped in respect. Over the years, I've worked for a great deal of commodity boards representing a variety of different crops, and I've worked very closely with the farmers that make up that board. And, I see and hear all of the hard work that goes in to what they are producing for us, for the world, and for us to enjoy and to consume. And when I look at that and all that goes into that, I thought, my part is to do a small part and to do the easy part, which is promoting what they do. And so that really is the essence of that mantra and why I'm such an advocate for it.
And something else to talk about real fast, in a presentation you're giving involving artificial intelligence, and what role do you see that when it comes to agriculture and communications?
Right. So we, I believe, are right on the cusp of another major change. If we look back 30 years, it was the internet that was becoming the next new and big thing. And really that has just set in motion so many different things. Well, I think we're there right now with generative AI and how that is coming online. And I do think that it will change careers. It will change our roles. It will change, how we approach things. I have heard it said that generative AI will not replace humans, but those who know how to use it will replace those who do not. And that was in a great article that was in the Harvard Business Review. And I just really resonated with that because I do think it will change our approach and really what we bring to the table. And I think maybe some good and exciting ways too. Really taking us beyond some of the technical skills that we've used in communication so far and really helping elevate and transition those.
Shelly, as we round out today's conversation, any final thoughts you'd like to leave with producers or people who are wanting to communicate about agriculture?
Well, I think that the opportunities are endless. There are so many organizations, associations, commodity boards, corporations, and they are all looking to tell the story of agriculture and the story of the products or services that they are bringing to the market. And so I think for the up-and-coming graduates from the Ag Communications programs, I think the future is bright because there's just so many opportunities out there and such a great need. I just think that is only going to continue to grow over time. And us, really helping to tell agriculture's story is something that is going to offer a lot of potential for the future.
Shelly, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Thank you, Shelby.
That was K-State's College of Agriculture 2024 Alumni Fellow Shelly Kessen. We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but stick around because we have more for you ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we conclude our Friday show with a weather update. And as always, we're joined by K-State meteorologist Chip Redmond. Chip, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Chip, looking at the weather we've had quite a bit of wind.
It's springtime in Kansas, and the wind continues to blow. And we've seen it with both large-scale wind, with just strong winds over a widespread area, and we've also seen it with small-scale wind, with thunderstorm-produced wind gusts. And we've had many locations reach over the 50-mile-an-hour mark, especially the western half of the state, where there's just a lot less things to stop the wind out there. But we did see some peak gusts this week of over 60 miles an hour. We saw a gust up there by Phillipsburg that was associated with a thunderstorm, and then we saw a gust 60 mile an hour a while later that was associated with no thunderstorm. So very strong winds, and unfortunately we had a lot of blowing dust with that too. There was blowing dust advisories that were put up, and I know a few roads were closed just because of visibility concerns. Unfortunately, that's not good news for the wheat that we have in the ground that is taking a beating from that wind, and also means that earth is being lost, and unfortunate that we have to have these kind of wind events this time of year.
And Chip, you've mentioned thunderstorms a few times, and where in Kansas did we see those?
We saw thunderstorms scattered throughout the state is probably the best way to put it. We've kind of transitioned to more of the convective season now, where thunderstorms are the main provider of precipitation, and they tend to be very isolated, and it can be a mild difference. We saw just in the Manhattan area, where both north and south of Manhattan got a lot less rain over the last two moisture events than actually at Manhattan, where they got a lot more. And we see that throughout the state. We had the heaviest rainfall over the last week focused kind of in northeast Kansas, where the precipitation occurred multiple times. Whereas you get further west, it became much more sporadic. Thankfully, a severe weather potential that wasn't quite realized, and we didn't see as much severe weather as we could have, especially on Monday. But we had some hail reports and some strong wind reports as well. I think the biggest hail I saw was about 2-inch diameter hail that fell on Wednesday night in northeast Kansas. So it's that time of the year where we just get thunderstorm activity, and unfortunately, we just don't get the widespread rainfall we need.
And were there any concern for tornadoes then in Kansas?
We did have concern for tornadoes. Thankfully, that wasn't realized as much as I know the Storm Prediction Center was calling for. We did have a couple small tornadoes. We had a couple up in north central Kansas, and then a couple just east of Topeka as well. Most of them are pretty small. I actually haven't seen the ratings on them, but I know they were very localized and just hit a few things.
And as we are talking about the rain that some people in Kansas got, how does that look then for drought expansion and fire concerns?
Yeah, so the warm, dry conditions over the last 2 weeks has taken a toll. In fact, we still saw pretty active fire, an escape prescribed fire last weekend. Anytime we have the wind pick up as much as we've had, we have fire risk. A huge thanks to folks for just being smart and not having a lot of fire starts, though, especially in the southwest, south central. We're really concerned about that substantial grass loading. We didn't have fire activity, and I cannot tell you how much we, as firefighters, we appreciate the fact that people just decided not to do anything that would cause a spark. But the dry and warm conditions also had an impact on drought. We saw substantial drought expansion this week. In fact, probably one of the bigger expansions we've seen over the last few months, where we doubled the amount of moderate drought in the state. We went from about 25% of the state to over 53% of the state now in moderate drought. And we also saw severe drought increase. Now we have 7% of the state in severe drought. And we look at the folks without any abnormally dry or drought conditions right now, we're down to about 3%, which we hit a point there where we had about 25 to 30% of the state that was drought-free. So we're going the wrong way right now in the time of year where we should have precipitation. And so hopefully we can change that drumbeat to maybe start eliminating drought in the next few weeks.
And Chip, what can we be expecting moving forward?
Yeah, so it looks like we're going to be relatively dry across the state for the next week, but we do see hints of a pattern change as we get into early May, and that will kind of transition with that El Nino diminishing into La Nina look. Hopefully bring some more moisture and some more opportunities for thunderstorms and some warmer temperatures again after a cool weekend.
That was K-State meteorologist Chip Redmond. That's all we have for you this week on Agriculture Today, but we'll be back with more for you on Monday.